So hi, Sam. Do
Hi,
you want me to call you Sam or Samuel?
I go by Sam.
Okay, good, because I feel like I'm your mother when I say Samuel.
Yes, when people say Samuel, it does feel like I'm in trouble. So,
I like that. When I moved to the South, people started calling me Drue Michael, which is my first and middle name. And I had previously kind of used Michael as my professional last name,
mhm,
but it's like now my full first name is Drue Michael.
okay.
And it kind of what my mom yelled at me when I was little, like if I was in trouble, but um, I've gotten over that. The flashbacks have stopped. So I'm just like I have a lot of questions about circumcision for you. Um, and I think it's something where like I was just Googling or not Googling, but I was searching on YouTube about circumcision and uncircumcision. And your channel came up. So how long have you had your channel?
I first trying to think. I had the first few videos. I did maybe 3 or 4 videos in 2015, 2016, I think, and then I kind of left it to the side and didn't do anything for for a while. And then I think it was, I'd say a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. I'd have to look on the dates on the videos actually. But for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been trying to post fairly regularly. So out of my, I don't know, 70 to 80 videos that I have on there, I've done probably all but 4 of them in the last 2 to 3 years. And
Okay.
I try to post fairly regularly. Sometimes they're more informative, sometimes they're more fun, just something to try to keep it in the forefront of people's minds.
Exactly. And it's also cool because they're seeing like from a firsthand experience someone whose lifestyle involves like a advocacy for the issue of being intact, but also just someone who like has fun with their body. Like you're just very body positive in your channel.
Mhm. I
So
think
that's
it's
fun.
I, thanks. I found it's important to do that because people have all of these misinformation, myths, outright lies that they've been told about the foreskin, and then so it's like they kind of have this idea of, the foreskin. They think of it as being something negative, like they've been told, oh, it's circumcision is more healthy, foreskin is dirty, or, oh, if you have a foreskin, you're just going to have one problem after another. It's like these are the ideas that they've just subtly kind of the culture. I call it, it's basically there's a cultural bias against the foreskin in the United States. and
Right.
and so it's kind of like one of those things that, another thing that I've heard people say is they're like, oh, all the guys who had their foreskin, were uncircumcised or intact or whatever, they all wish their parents had done it when they were a baby. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 I'm really glad that I was not circumcised. And I think it's important because I've come across guys who, when they say that, they feel bad about it. They feel almost like they're apologetic for their foreskin instead of saying, no, this is great and wonderful. And so I think it's important that we, speak out about it so that not only other guys that have their foreskin are happy and proud about it instead of feeling ashamed, but also so that they can tell people that information, so that when they go and maybe down the road they have a baby, they're like, and they're hearing this, oh, circumcision is, the way to go, and all, they're like, wait a minute, there was, I've heard guys talking about how awesome it was to have their foreskin. Maybe I should rethink this. um,
Yeah. What was it, do you think, that made you want to become an advocate for it? Is it because you grew up in this country and did it seem like there weren't a lot of guys when you were growing up that looked like you?
that's definitely the case. Definitely, I mean, growing up in Indiana, there is definitely, the Midwest has a very high percentage of circumcision. So being uncircumcised is very, very unusual for a guy my age, who's born in the United States. I've had people, in fact, even ask me, like, were you born in Europe? It's like, nope, I was born in Indiana. They're like, wow, that's amazing. It's surprising. But yeah, it's one of those things that as I got older and I went into healthcare, professionally, as I was going through college, I just started, picking these topics as my research topics and writing all of my papers about it, and really kind of looking at papers and position statements and things that were written globally. Because too many times when people say that they've done their research, that means they've looked at WebMD, or they've looked at various American agencies, which are influenced by this cultural bias. I mean, in reading many papers about the topic, I've found so many people would say, maybe let's say talking about penile cancer or HIV or any of the other common excuses people claim as to why circumcision is better. The papers would always have this little line in it. The American papers would always have this little line that would say something about, and of course, circumcision reduces the cases of blah, blah, blah. They would just say it. They never actually proved it. They just said it as in and as everybody knows, et cetera, et cetera. They never actually justified that statement. They just said it, which showed their bias from the beginning.
But that was their proof for all the other things they were saying, but it's something that hasn't in itself been proven.
Correct. And in fact, when you look at the statistics, all of these things that they were saying, of course, circumcision prevents all of these things, or drastically reduces it to whatever extent you want to say that they're talking about. When you look at countries that don't perform circumcisions, and not, at least not on a regular basis, like most of the countries of Europe are under 10%. Most of the countries of Europe. I think Britain might be a little higher because at one point they were a circumcising country and then they went away from it. The rest of Europe has really not been, and so they're lower. Or you could say Peru. Peru has a percentage of 3.7, 3.8% of circumcision. Very, very low. That's how it should be. We need to get rid of circumcision altogether. But when you look at the statistics, if foreskin was the problem, if you have a country where 90+% of guys have their foreskin, then you would think if foreskin is a problem, all these so-called problems would increase exponentially. A country with the United States, like the United States, where you have 85% overall or whatever, I don't remember the exact numbers. It changes every time, every time a new babies are born. But let's just say we know it's very high. We know it's very high. And a country like that, you'd think, oh, all of these so-called problems that they're claiming, they should be very low. But when you look at the number of incidents for the population in Europe, South America, it's either the same or some things are even a little lower. It's not like, oh, Europe and South America is having all these problems, whereas the United States is sitting pretty. No, it's quite the contrary. It's the number. So clearly, foreskin is not the problem. The math alone says that's not true.
It's kind of also like saying like, well, you can only get breast cancer like if you have breasts, so let's cut everybody's breasts off. It's like, no, most people don't get it. It's not a danger. Like, let's have breasts if you want
It's one
them.
of those things that if you are going to try to cut off a part of the body to prevent a potential problem, where are you going to stop? I
Yeah.
mean, I actually work in the cancer field, and pretty much any part of the body you can get cancer. So if that's your criteria for cutting a part of the body off,
Yeah.
you're never going to stop,
Right.
So, I mean, besides, cutting off a healthy, functioning, important body part because you might have a problem 60, 80 years down the road is not an excuse, especially when you're doing it without the permission of the person to whom the foreskin belongs. And that's one of the key, aside from everything else that you want to say, it's kind of like, it's not yours to cut. It's not yours to
Right.
cut, so.
Right. Well, why do you think that the United States is like so obsessed with it? Like, why is it such a big deal for us to do it?
Well, it kind of caught on in popularity with, there's a lot of different things, but there was a guy in the United States, Kellogg, the same one, famous one from the cornflakes, who
Mm-hmm.
who had a lot of, let's say, how should we call him? Was very prudish and maybe
Yeah.
also let's say sadistic.
Was he
Um,
also a white supremacist?
that I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. But
Okay.
first of all, he thought, well, that by cutting off the foreskin, it would prevent boys from masturbating.
Right.
Because,
Which
he
is terrible.
believed masturbation was not only evil and wrong, but would cause all sorts of diseases and mental
Palms.
illness and, all the old wives' tales that have been said, epilepsy, you'll go blind. There's, there's as many of them as hear today of what diseases we can prevent by cutting off the foreskin. There's just as many of those, and they're just as crazy. They've just kind of changed the approach a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, he believed that, and he believed in doing it without anesthesia because he thought the pain would somehow reside in the memory and keep people from
The trauma.
doing it.
Right.
He was also known for doing similar things to girls. Also, even things like using acid, like putting acid on the clitoris to cause pain so that they would not touch themselves or whatever.
Right.
So it does not have a pretty history, but it was kind of, that was also the era of the, they talk about the, what do they call that? The snakeskin salesman, the snake oil. Yeah, the snake oil salesman, where they'll just, the newest and greatest, the most scientific. I mean, you didn't really even have to provide any evidence. You just made a claim, and there were people that were ready to believe it.
Right.
And so people would buy this thing of, hey, the circumcised penis is the healthier, more scientific, improved by science. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of thing, and they would just keep on pushing it until it became customary. And like with so many other things, people came to equate foreskin equals problems.
Right.
It
Well,
was
there's
also something that they would push in the hospitals. And so if you were circumcised, it could almost be like a status symbol. You were rich enough to be born in a hospital because
Yeah.
until the modern era, rich people were born in hospitals, poor people had babies at home. So it was kind of like if you were circumcised, that was almost showed you were well off because your family was well-to-do enough to do the newest scientific methods, kind of thing. I mean, that was, all of those had it wasn't one thing or the other. It was a little bit of everything for different people.
I feel like probably the baby boomer generation was like maybe one of the largest waves of circumcised people,
Mm-hmm.
like probably your parents, my parents,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe like the generation before that was like half and half. Like, I don't know, but
that is the generation where it really became full steam. I mean, that was the era where all of those things were considered things that don't make sense scientifically. Were, when you look back on them now, were the things that people were pushing. That was like all of those things, like the 50s, for example. That was when breastfeeding was considered, that's for poor people. Once again, that's for poor people. The new scientific one is you want the nice fortified formula. Well, we all know
right.
breast milk is what is best for babies. That's what is best for babies. I mean, that's why it's there in the first place. But in the 50s, it was all about let's make a scientifically concocted whatever and push it on everybody. The 50s, unfortunately, we did not also have as well developed rules on consent then. So the 50s was often cases where during those decades, it wasn't just the 50s, but I'm saying as a highlight, a high point of, or low point, however you want to look at it. But that was an era where they would just take the baby and circumcise them. There wasn't a consent form. It was just assumed, well, everybody knows this is the best. This is what you're going to do. It was almost, so for someone to deny that, then they had to really be active. That mother had to really be, do everything in her power to prevent it, because they didn't ask.
Right.
They would often just do it. Which is unbelievable. How, I mean, I always think the gall, people thinking, I mean, and to this day, it's like, to me, it's the same thing. The gall of people thinking that they have a right to make that decision. I don't care if it's a health professional or the parent. You can't just decide, to cut off a body part. Oh, well, you know what? Earlobes, they're not really needed for anything. Well, we're just going to cut them off because that's what we do in our family. I mean, see how stupid that sounds? I mean, it really makes no sense. It really makes no sense, and, I mean, and the foreskin has a lot more use than the earlobes. But yet, if people, I mean, the foreskin has a lot more use than the earlobes. But yet, if a parent, and this is the thing that kind of is like a double standard, is if a parent were to decide to have a part of their child's body, any other part of their body, just cut off just because they wanted to, I mean, the child would probably be taken away from those parents. It'd be considered child abuse. But somehow circumcision is, the foreskin, that's perfectly okay. And people are even shocked at the idea that they don't have the right to do that. It's unethical. It's medically unethical to circumcise because it's not a life-saving procedure, because, and that's why I focus a lot on the health reasons, because if people want to try to say, well, if your child has cancer, you're not going to ask them permission to do surgery and remove the tumor. I'm like, yeah, that's a life-threatening illness. Foreskin is a healthy part of the body. It's a totally different situation.
What do you think that situation looks like nowadays, where a mother, two parents have the baby, and then how soon after the baby's born do they decide whether or not to circumcise it? Are they being pressured constantly still in most hospitals? What do you think that looks like?
I think there are more people that are hearing of these kinds of debates going on online, YouTube, Facebook, people talking about it more. And so people are maybe a little bit more aware. And I think sometimes they talk about it maybe throughout their pregnancy, you know, to friends and family and things like that. But I think all too often there's far too many hospitals where they are still asking, like, no sooner does a mother, you know, is in labor and is at the hospital, you know, they're signing a whole bunch of paper for consent for everything under the sun, and there's often a form in there that includes a circumcision form. And so unless you're paying attention, you know, between contractions, you might accidentally sign one of the thick stack of paperwork and not realize it, which is really kind of, you know, it's, and again, like I said, it's something that the parents shouldn't be allowed to make that choice for the child, just like they're not allowed to choose to cut off any other part of the body for any old reason, you know.
Right.
But I think that the problem is that the hospitals, instead of, you know, the hospitals, I think by and large try to say this thing of, if you try to talk to somebody at a hospital like against it, they try to say, well, it's the parent's choice. Well, first of all, it's not the parent's choice. It should not be the parent's choice. It should be the one to whose foreskin it is. That's who should make the choice once he's an adult. But the hospitals try to kind of play it that way. Oh, it's the parent's decision. But the problem is that you can see that the hospital is biased in that direction because they're even asking. You know, it's like you hear so many stories when you're talking to people that when they go to the hospital, you know, that like people that say no, they're asked like by multiple nurses or whatever, or the questions are even sometimes just kind of like, okay, so we're going to be taking them to get circumcised, right? It's they're biased in favor of, and like, well, this is the norm. Or if you say no, they're going to be like, well, you got to make sure you keep it clean. You know, it's like they immediately are they're immediately trying to influence it towards circumcision, you know,
Right.
instead of, I mean, instead what they should be doing is telling, they should have done their research on the value of the foreskin and how it's not a problem and all that kind of thing. And when a parent comes in wanting to do circumcision, it should be their job to inform them and say, you know, this is a totally unnecessary procedure. And I mean, frankly, the hospital should say, we don't do that on someone who's unable to consent for themselves. It's a cosmetic procedure, and we can't, you know, it's unethical to do that. That's what the hospital should be telling everybody. And if the hospitals would do their job in that way, parents would learn what it's really like very quickly, and this process would go down. But instead, you know, the hospitals try to do the, oh, well, it's the parent's choice at the same time, yet even the very ways they question it and say it, it makes it sound like they're encouraging it.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I was little, they didn't do it when I was born because something was happening, like maybe it was like bent or like the skin was really tight on one side. And they kind of thought like, well, let's wait to see like how it figures itself out. And so by the age of 6, like it hadn't apparently, and I have no idea, like neither of my parents even remember exactly what the situation was. But by the time I was 6, they were like, well, we're going to go on a trip to this magical place. And it was the hospital, and they put me under, and they used the foreskin as a graft to correct whatever it was. And I woke up and it hurt really bad. That's all I remember. Like nobody asked me. I don't remember having a foreskin because I was so little. But I definitely have like weird scars that I don't think used to be there when I was a baby. It's not like terrible, but it looks like a normal circumcised penis, I guess. but there's no more frenulum. Like it's been like it looks like it had a sword fight and lost. It's not that bad, but there's no more frenulum. And I almost wish that, like, of all the things, I know the frenulum is so rich in nerves, and I wish that they had just like found a way to like keep that at least.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, that's like the connection between the head of the penis and the foreskin, you know, it kind of connects it. So cutting that off, I can't even imagine. It's like, it's a horrible thing to do. But one of the things that they've done is like that, I mean, at least that it's so crazy that like you recognize that there are scars there, but it's like when talking to people, it's so amazing that there are people who are circumcised who think, well, no, I don't have any scar. It's like, yeah, that ring around, that's a scar. That's not supposed to be there. You know, it's like,
yeah.
they don't even get that, because to them, that's what a quote, quote, normal penis looks like. They don't even see it as a scar. Circumcision has become so normalized that it's like, I've known of people who, I mean, adult men who, you know, if you're having conversation of this type with them, they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm circumcised. Kind of like, immediately that tells me, okay, that means you are, because if you're not, you're gonna know. You know, I think if you're not, you know, there's a lot of other people that they have something missing, you know. So it's but it's just amazing to me that people would been so brainwashed into thinking that the head being exposed all the time is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
It's like, no, you know, it's like, one of the things people don't realize is the head of the penis is supposed to be an internal organ. It's an internal part of the body. It's really, you know, it's not supposed to be sticking out all the time.
I've seen so many, this is kind of gross, but I've seen so many like dick pics of like just like really dry looking like glands, and I'm like, first of all, you need to moisturize, I think, but like you wouldn't have to if you had a foreskin.
I mean, that's one of the main reasons. Not only is the foreskin very, very rich in nerves, but also it protects the glands. It keeps the glands moist, and it keeps them in the right
like pH
environment. Yeah, the right pH, the right environment to function correctly, to be soft and smooth and sensitive. And when you have it dry out, there's this process of keratinization that occurs, which you know, is a thickening of the skin. It's less sensitive. I mean, keratinization, like when we get a callus, like when we get calluses, you know, if you play a musical instrument, you get calluses on your fingers. That's a buildup of keratin. You know, it makes it more tough, and so it's not as sensitive. We have that the bottoms of our feet where we walk. You know, it builds up and thickens, and you get that on the head of the penis, which is not something you would really want on something that's supposed to be very sensitive in a good way. The foreskin like has so not only does it protect the glands like that, but like I said, it has all of these nerve endings. People are always surprised when I tell them. It's like they seem to often labor under the delusion that the head or glands is the most sensitive part of the penis. And it's like, no, all the best feeling, the most sensitivity, that's in the foreskin. It's the foreskin.
Right.
That is literally the best part of the penis.
But that statement is based on maybe someone who's been circumcised. So if you don't have a foreskin, then I guess the head would be the part of your penis with the most sensitivity.
Correct. You know, yeah, once you've taken off the best part, then the second best part is what's left, you know.
Right.
But it is interesting to note that, you know, because also, again, as you mentioned with the frenulum, And then, as I was just talking about with the foreskin, but you do have people who were circumcised who do sometimes, maybe they, you know, the frenulum didn't get completely removed, or they will notice, or people have commented and written things saying like they'll notice like a certain part, like kind of like where the scar was, or where the frenulum, a little part of the frenulum might remain, that there's extra special good feelings there, in that little remnant that's left. So it's like one of those things that when people realize that, they're kind of like, oh, if only I had all of it, it's
Right.
Exactly.
I'm very curious to know like what it would feel like. Like what is, I guess to get a little sexual, like what is it? I want to say, what does it feel like to have a foreskin? But like, what is it that like you enjoy about it, like during sex or like anything sexual? Like it obviously works better. I've known when I have sex with people, like I like bottoming for guys who are uncircumcised, because it feels like the penis goes in and out more like gracefully. Like it's not a lot of friction. It's like a lot of like, there's like a little skin cloud.
Exactly. And that's what people try to, people don't often realize that it's like, yeah, for sex, as I'm always saying, is the penis is designed to function with a foreskin. So it makes sense that it would feel better when bottoming, for when the penis is going in, the foreskin is helping with that gliding motion. There's people that don't know, that try to say, oh, well, but that's just like doing it in, masturbating in yourself. So what's the point of sex? It's like, but no, it's all interacting. That gliding friction is not what creates the pleasant sensations. Just think of it. Many guys that are circumcised use lotion. What does lotion do? Lotion is creating that gliding motion. Your hand, like if you're masturbating, your hand with the lotion is kind of then becomes more gliding. It's trying to mimic what the foreskin does.
Right.
It's trying to mimic that. For a guy who is not circumcised, if you're masturbating, you don't need lotion because you already have the foreskin there.
Right.
Now for sex, the foreskin helps you reduce the friction, which is the unpleasant part, and then that gliding motion, that the penis going back and forth inside, with that foreskin also moving, it creates a, how should we say, it's almost like a, I don't know, it's almost just like waves of pleasure, shall we say, going in and out, in a very pleasant way, as opposed to just a dry, hard,
like an iceberg
knob,
scrape.
a
lot of friction.
Yes, it creates friction. And there's actually an article that I've read before. It was with heterosexual sex, but it was also saying that women have in recent decades complained, all the time, and they always think it's their fault about being so dry during sex. They feel maybe sore afterwards. They feel like the guy is just pounding away, and it's kind of making them feel raw.
Right.
And it's like, that's because of circumcision. Guys that are circumcised have to have that stronger friction, that harder pounding. They have to get that, because it's harder for them to get the same effect, because they've lost part of it. So it's like one of those things but this dryness or lack of this dryness, they call it even like the vaginal dryness, the women often think that it's their fault, and they think sex is painful or sex doesn't feel well, or whatever. They don't enjoy it as much as they, think they would. I mean, think of it this way, there's that whole, people have heard of that expression. People will say, oh yeah, Latin lovers or something, people talk about a Latin lover, whatever, being so, it's a big part of why they probably thought, not only because Hispanic men are very attractive, but
the firsthand experience.
Yes. But not only that, but it's also a good reason probably why they found sex so enjoyable with Latin or Hispanic, whatever term people choose to use. The reason why they probably found it so pleasurable was because they don't circumcise. Their penis was working as it was supposed to, and they just thought, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy, the sex with this one, and they're not even maybe putting together that, no, it's because his penis is complete. He has all of his parts. So it's kind of one of those things that the natural way it's designed is going to feel more pleasurable. And, whether that's for heterosexual or for homosexual, it's the same concept of the penis is going in somewhere and that foreskin is helping with that gliding motion. So yes, I mean, a penis with foreskin is always going to feel better.
So you've heard of docking.
Yes.
Have you ever done docking, and was it a lot of fun?
I have done docking before, and it is definitely a lot of fun. It is, I'm guessing probably most people probably know what it is, but for those that don't, is,
what is that?
Is when you have when one guy who is uncircumcised pulls his foreskin over the head of another guy. Now, that other guy can be circumcised or can also be uncircumcised. I remember someone asked me once, well, does it work when both guys are uncircumcised? I'm like, well, yeah, just then it's like double seal, But
Perfect. Now you're a plumber.
But yeah, it's just but yeah, it has a very pleasurable feeling for both people. If the guy is circumcised and he's not used to feeling that gliding motion, he gets a little sense of what a foreskin looks like in that practice.
What's
that?
I never thought about it like that, but that's really cool.
Yeah, he kind of gets a little hint of what it can be like, and then the guy who is pulling the foreskin over the others, I mean, of course, his foreskin is getting very stimulated and everything, and so it's feeling very pleasant for him too. So yes, it definitely.
It's the foreskin. I'm not, obviously some foreskins are longer than others. Is it easy to open it up and put it around another penis?
The foreskin is very stretchy.
Okay.
The foreskin is stretchy. Now, that being said, I mean, like with every other part of the body, everybody is a little different. Some people are not as
elastic.
Yeah, some people don't have as much foreskin. Their foreskins, maybe they just don't have as much. Other people, maybe it is just a little tighter, so there's always those varieties. Just like, one of those things, for example, some guys, there are guys who are, who have their foreskin that when they become erect, the foreskin automatically retracts, and but that is, and there are people out there that try to say they try to act like, well, yeah, no, when it's erect, it looks just the same. It's like, no, and why should it? It's like, yes, some guys automatically retract, but there's a lot of us also who stay completely covered unless we pull it back manually. It's like, and that is completely how it's supposed to be also. But I think people are trying to, because they have in their idea that circumcision is normal, seeing the glands all the time is the ideal. I mean, in their mind. And so they think, oh, well, when it's erect, it should pop out and be exposed. And, well, okay, that's close enough to circumcised, kind of thing. It's like, no. But everybody has a different amount of foreskin. And so, guys that have less foreskin or whatever, then it might automatically retract when they become erect. But there's also a large percentage of guys that don't. They stay covered. Some guys just go back a little bit, some halfway, some stay completely covered. It's different for every guy. So, it's one of those things that so yes, it's true. Some guys, getting back to the docking, it's true. Some guys maybe they don't have quite enough, let's say, a looseness of foreskin, abundance of foreskin to be able to encompass every other penis they might come in contact with. So again, it varies.
Yeah. Very interesting. Now, what's the I guess disorder, for lack of a better word, where it just doesn't ever go back if it's too tight? And I think I've seen videos of yours where you were like, it's possible for you to start to loosen it without having surgery.
Okay, you're referring to a condition that is referred to as phimosis, 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 and that is, by definition, is a condition where the inability to retract the foreskin. So here you have, now, first of all, I'm gonna say, it's like, phimosis is not something that you can diagnose in childhood. Under the age of 18, there is no such thing as phimosis. American medical people will try to swear up and down that I don't know what I'm talking about, and because they insist. I mean, this is one of the biggest excuses they give. Even if a parent didn't circumcise their child when they were a baby, they'll try to tell parents, like, oh, he should be able to be retractable by the time he's 3 or by the time he's 6 or whatever. They'll try to say all these things. And if he's not, or sometimes even newborns, some of them are so ignorant that if they can't pull it back, they'll be like, oh, he has phimosis, he's going to have trouble, he's going to have problems. It's like, well, guess what? What these people have not learned, because they don't, in medical schools, they learn how to perform circumcisions. They don't learn about the foreskin and its benefits and what it's there for. They just look at it as something to get rid of. And it's kind of like, if people refuse to, they're kind of a problem patient, and they're just going to keep on trying to persuade them over time. But so if you pull back, so they call, so phimosis, being unable to retract the foreskin, they're trying to say, oh, all these boys need to be circumcised because they have phimosis. Well, no, the foreskin is not supposed to be able to retract when they're a child. The average age for someone to become retractable is 11 or 12. That's the average. That means some happen a little bit earlier and some happen later. All the way up until 18 is completely within the range of absolutely 100% normal. But the thing is, because circumcision, seeing the head of the penis, is so common, people seem to be obsessed with, they worry about, oh, am I normal? People are like, I get questions on my YouTube channel all the time. Oh, I'm however old, I can't retract yet. Am I normal? I'm like, yes, normal, yes, normal, yes, normal. If you're under 18 and you can't retract your foreskin, that's normal. That is normal. It's,
Mhm.
but people don't seem to understand that. I myself, I never saw the head of my penis until I was almost 16 years old. That was the first time I ever was able to retract my foreskin. I mean, so I helped bump that little average age up a little bit. But
Yeah.
even after someone is 18, and the reason why we always say 18 is because it's like people are still growing and developing, becoming
Yeah.
retracting and being able to retract and all of this is part of growth and development.
Yeah.
When a child is born and through their childhood, the foreskin is attached to the head of the penis like a fingernail to your nail bed. So if you are like trying to forcibly retract it, people have all sorts of crazy ideas. They think they need to pull it back and clean, or whatever. It's like, you don't do that in a child. You only clean the outside. But the thing is that it's like doing that. It's like pulling up the fingernail, saying, hey, I need to wash underneath my fingernail. Let me rip up my nail. I mean, that's anyone who's forcibly retracting. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing to that child.
Right.
And so it's like the foreskin is not supposed to retract until the teenage years. It gradually starts happening. Now, sometimes it happens even later. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But the thing is that the foreskin covering the glands is not a problem. You can still have sex. You can be completely healthy. You're not more likely to get cancer, despite the lies that they try to say. The only reason it could be a problem is if when you get erections, maybe it's might be so tight that that it causes pain or discomfort. This could be because every part of the body, there's going to be a small percentage of times something goes wrong. There's birth
Right.
defects in any and every part of the body that exists. It's not because it's foreskin, it's because we're human and things happen to the body.
Yeah.
So but for someone who is an adult and maybe has a foreskin that is very tight and causes them pain or discomfort, even then I'm never ever going to recommend anyone get circumcised. I mean, there's no reason under the sun that I would ever let anyone do that to me. But if someone is having problems, there are like creams that people can get, like steroid creams you can get from a doctor or whatever. But I think people would have to go to a doctor, and they would have to be very clear and say, this is what I want, because a doctor in the United States is going to push circumcision. They're going to keep pushing circumcision. They're not even, it's like, there was a very interesting paper, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was written by a surgeon in England. I don't remember if it was London or some other part of England, but anyway, somewhere in Great Britain, had this paper where it said circumcision should be an ultimate last resort. Here, if someone's feeling a little itchy, they're like, oh, well, you should get circumcised. It's like that's what they want to do first. Whereas in other countries where they value the circumcision, that's like the, if it's something so severe and there's nothing else absolutely will do anything, then maybe you might ultimately, maybe, possibly, could be slightly justified, maybe, but the thing is, first, there's steroid creams that you can use that'll help loosen up the skin. There are stretching. People often say, well, what kind of stretching exercise? Well, first of all, like take the foreskin, maybe pull it out away from the body, maybe try to stretch it a little bit that way from side to side. Maybe the opening is tight. Try to, and not so that you hurt yourself, but just gradually do stretching exercises. It's in some ways it's the same thing what guys undergo for years who are trying to restore their foreskin, try to get a little bit of slack back. You just trying to loosen it. Now, if both of those things were to not work, and usually those things are sufficient, those are sufficient. But there's also, in this English paper talked about, is if really there's the case of phimosis is so severe and they need to do something, then the first thing would be a dorsal slit. Now, a dorsal slit is basically exactly what it sounds like. They just cut a slit in the foreskin, which makes the opening wider, enabling it to work. And then it heals, and then it's able to glide back and forth like it's supposed to. But at the same time, you have preserved the foreskin and all of that wonderful sensation, those nerves, everything how it's supposed to be. You've just loosened up the opening by a single little slit that helps enlarge it. There you are truly maybe saving the foreskin as opposed to just completely destroying it and cutting it off. But again, those surgical options are only a very last resort. I mean, usually stretching and things like that would be much quicker and easier. The problem is you have all these medical people that take this as an excuse to try to push circumcision and say, oh, well, the only way to get rid of this problem is to get circumcised. Oh, this is what happens. I mean, they really push it. Phimosis is really not that big of an issue. And yet the way people talk about it, you'd think every single uncircumcised guy has phimosis. And well, guess what? According to their definition, for the first few years of their lives, they're supposed to have it. Because by definition, inability to retract the foreskin. And, at least up until age 11 or 12, that's the norm. When people don't force it, it's supposed to be that way. So,
yeah. I also think there's a thing like a lot of people are afraid of like hygiene, cleanliness. But I'm thinking like, what about like if you have a little baby girl, like she has a vagina, like you can't clean inside her vagina. Like, why do you have to be able to clean inside and around the foreskin?
Yeah, it's very interesting the double standard people have kind of come up with when it comes to this, because, when you think about it, remember, as I was saying earlier, the head of the penis is an internal organ. We don't clean the inside parts of our bodies, typically. The inside is protected by the body itself. In fact, women are told not to put soap inside their vaginas because it'll cause yeast infections and they'll have, they'll get all sorts of problems and irritation. And that is exactly the same rule for a guy with foreskin. But yet people can't seem to make this correlation at all. It's like women, using soap inside their vagina, it's going to change their pH and cause yeast infections. It also, by the way, increases when changing that pH level, it also makes the environment more friendly to odor. So people that complain that there's this odor and they keep soaping it up, thinking that's going to do it. Well, you know what? They're exacerbating the problem. They are doing exactly what makes the environment more friendly. Guys constantly using soap inside their foreskins, it's going to smell more than if you just rinse with water only, as you are supposed to do. Changing that pH level causes problems. It causes a smell. It causes a lot of issues. But yet, while everybody acknowledges, oh yeah, no, everybody knows girls should not put soap inside their vagina. But when you talk about, you should only, once a guy is retractable. Now, when a guy's not retractable, like that means as a kid, early teenage years, you just clean the outside. You are not supposed to try to force the foreskin back and clean under it. No, that is actually absolutely the wrong thing to do. Once you are retractable, and it's comfortable for you to do so, because if you're very, very newly retractable, it may be very, very sensitive. So it's not necessary you start immediately. But, as time goes on, then when you take a shower, pull back the foreskin, you rinse it with water, you pull the foreskin back over it. It takes 2 to 3 seconds. And that's all that you need to do for it to stay clean and healthy. But people have gotten so brainwashed with this whole, oh, it's dirty, it's whatever. When they hear that, they're like, oh, you know, I mean, you hear people say, they're horrified. They think that's so unsanitary. Or they think, oh, I just wouldn't feel clean not using soap. It's like, you're causing yourself problems. Or the other excuse is, well, I've always used soap and I've never had a problem.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, here's how the body works. When you may use a product and you don't have any, you know, and the body doesn't give any noticeable reaction to it. And you may keep using it, keep using it. Then one day the body's going to be like, I can't take this product anymore. And you're going to start breaking out, maybe in hives, you know, or something, you know. Sometimes people have used something for years and all of a sudden it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, yeah, it may not be causing you a problem until it does. But then what happens with a lot of guys, once they start having like redness and irritation and yeast infections and all these things, then they think, oh, this is what everybody said about being dirty. I'm not keeping it clean enough. I better wash it more. And so then they start doing it more and more and more. I studied a lot of dermatology articles who were not referring to the foreskin, but they talked about this precise process with other parts of the body, whether it be the face and acne or other like body folds in obese patients, things like that. As people think, oh, I need to scrub, and I'm actually creating an environment it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've been told it's dirty, so I'm going to clean extra. The more I clean, it's just not doing anything, and they can't seem to get. And they go into the doctor, and the doctor doesn't tell them, you need to quit using soap in your foreskin. The doctor's kind of like, well, you know, circumcision is really it's just gonna
just cut it off.
Yeah, it's kind of like they don't seem to get that, and so it's like really people need to realize that the foreskin does not cause problems. It is, you know, when people are having these issues, it's because of the lack of proper care. You know, if a woman is putting soapy water up her vagina and she's having trouble, are you going to say, oh, you know, we need to get rid of this whole vagina business? It's just nothing but trouble. It's causing one infection after another. No, people are like, stop using soap up in there. Soap doesn't belong in there. Soap does not belong up inside the foreskin either, but yet people can't seem to wrap their head around it. They've been so brainwashed into foreskin is dirty, must use lots of soap and water so that I don't have a problem that everybody says I'm eventually going to get anyway. Yeah. You know, it's kind of they can't seem to wrap their heads around that and get it. Funny enough, though, it's like it seems to be only in the United States where people seem to have the biggest issue with this. Like in talking with my boyfriend from Peru, it's kind of like he was like, he's never used soap. I mean, and these kinds of discussions just don't exist. You know, like I told my boyfriend we were going to be doing this podcast thing, and you know, he helps me out on my channel and things like that. And he said that he's told his friends there, you know, they're in Peru about this, and they're just kind of like, why, huh? Why?
Or they don't use soap at all.
What's that?
They don't use soap at all.
Well, no. I'm not saying about soap. I'm just saying about this, talking about like circumcision. Like why would you circumcise at all? It's like all of them are like, why would you need to have a YouTube channel to tell people not to cut off the foreskin? It's kind of like, you know, it's like to them, it's like so obvious that you would want to keep it, that it's kind of like the whole idea that you have to actually persuade people not to cut the foreskin off their babies is insane to them.
This is America. Yeah.
But what I was getting about, going back to the soap thing, is like when you grow up in a culture where the foreskin is seen as normal and healthy, you don't have this mentality of, oh, I've got to scrub it and scrub it and scrub it and scrub it. You know, they don't have this idea, you know, like when talking to my boyfriend about this, he's like, you know, it's almost like, why would they use soap? No, you don't put soap in there. It's just like something that he didn't even, it's kind of like, why would someone do that? You know, it's just kind of like a common sense thing. And when you think of it, you know, when you grow up in a culture that's uncircumcised for generations, has been uncircumcised, those are probably some of those common things that you've just unconsciously, you know, subconsciously, whatever, you know, it's like you've passed down father to son, whatever, just, no, you don't put, you know, whatever it is, you don't put soap in there. No, you don't mess with that now, you know, or whatever. It's like, just no big deal. No, it's not like you don't have to have a whole scientific discussion about it. It's just what you do, you know? So like he doesn't remember anyone ever telling him, oh, don't use soap in there, you'll have problems. It's just, no, you don't use soap inside your foreskin.
Right.
You know,
it's
just not a thing. It's not something that you even have to debate. It's kind of like, no, I've never used soap inside. You know, it's just, it's kind of like, well, no. You know, it just seems odd. I guess what I've tried to say in a roundabout way is that if you grow up in a culture where foreskin is the norm, then it's just normal. You don't assume every time you turn around it's going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the mentality of the United States. Is people think that if they're not circumcised, they need to take extra care not to have these problems, and they don't realize that it's designed to be the way you have it. Foreskin is how it's designed. It doesn't need extra care. Leave it alone is the best advice. Leave it alone. You know, the extra cleaning is what's causing the problems.
Did you grow up, like, was it just your family didn't circumcise, or like, how did you get so lucky?
Well, it was not something that we really talked about in my family growing up. But the only thing that I was ever told was just, well, we knew there was no reason for it. That was pretty much, you know, there's no reason for it.
Are you the only boy in your family?
What's that?
Are you the only son?
No, I have several younger brothers. I was the first.
Okay.
So.
And your father is circumcised or no?
He is. I mean,
he was
born in 1952 in Indiana. So,
oh my God.
You know,
they snipped him.
Yeah.
Oh, poor dad. I mean, that's so funny because kind of like what you said about guys being circumcised and being like, oh, I don't know if I'm circumcised. I have no idea if my brothers are circumcised. I have 3 brothers. And I've never talked about it, and they probably are, and it's probably just a thing of like, we just don't talk about it because it seems like nothing happened to us, except for my story, because of how it happened, but also because I think I'm the only gay brother, so like, of course I'm obsessed with penises, so I've seen a lot of penises. I don't think
penises are awesome. I mean, you know.
They're really awesome. I don't think my brothers think they're nearly as awesome. Like, I think they're like, I have this like ugly thing, and you know, girls sometimes like. It's
so crazy. I always have a hard time understanding that idea, because I hear even people promoting circumcision, promoting the foreskin or whatever. You hear people say something about, well, all penises are ugly. You know, like people say, oh, well, you know, foreskin is ugly. And it's like, and people try to counter that with, well, all penises are ugly. I'm like, no, penises are not ugly. Why would you say that? You know, it's like, why would you say that? They're not ugly. They're actually attractive. I mean, I guess that's why you're gay, and I'm gay. I mean, but you know, it's like, because they're attractive. I mean, to say they're ugly, it's like, well, one, that's not really answering the argument. It's just by saying, well, you think it's gross? Well, they're all gross. No, they're not.
Right.
No, they're not.
But that's an and too from like this like kind of patriarchal heteronormative society where like what men think is true. So like if men don't like penises, then they're not beautiful, and if they like vaginas, then they're beautiful. It's like, okay. I don't subscribe.
Now, when you were saying, what state did you say that you were born in?
I was born in Michigan, so in the Midwest.
Then I am going to say that at one point Michigan was well over 90% circumcising. So if your brothers were not, it would be highly surprising. I mean, not impossible. I mean, look at me, born in Indiana, not circumcised. Right. So it does happen once in a great while, but.
Well, my oldest brother was born in 1969. I was born in 1986. So there is a huge gap, but I think, that was still a huge period of time where they did it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's still really, really high in the Midwest, even now. I mean, 69, I mean, you want to say almost guaranteed. I was born in 1979. I was born in 79. And so being born in 79 in Indiana, not being circumcised is pretty unusual.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Indiana and Michigan are some very, very high rates of circumcision, unfortunately.
Well, do you ever remember, like, because you probably like had to shower at school at some point in time. Do you remember being teased about it?
I have seen over the years in taking showers and things like that. I was usually the only one in the showers that was not circumcised. By and large, I'm going to say most of the time. I mean, there's always going to be the occasional people, the occasional guy who's going to make fun of anything and everything. Right. It's like, I mean, this is what people seem to forget is that, I mean, people are going to make fun of you if you wear glasses, if you don't wear glasses, if you're fat, if you're too thin, if maybe you didn't develop as quickly as the rest of the class, or, things like that. I mean, so yes, foreskin or not, no foreskin is not going to be, it's not going to necessarily be off the table, when it comes to that. However, I mean, a lot of guys, especially someone who is not gay or someone who's in the closet, is often afraid to mention, if they do notice, they're often going to be afraid to mention it for fear of being called gay.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, they may see your penis. I mean, and I've noticed, like, if I'm in a shower and you see someone's just kind of, not looking, but just the scan, the general scan or whatever, you can almost see when they notice. It's it's almost like it stops and there's a double take, like kind of like not what I was expecting there, but they recover quickly and continue on their business, but you can kind of notice that they've noticed something was different. Something like that. Occasionally somebody will say something. They usually need to find a way to say it as macho and not gay as possible. Kind of thing, like, because they if they're gonna say something, if they want to make fun of you, they need to find a way how not to make it look like they were interested or something like that, So I'm going to say the people that have actually said something overall is like so minor. Like I said, I think it's, and nowadays I think people are even more afraid to say anything to anybody about a lot of things. So I think a lot of people would not You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, have I gotten the, well, why aren't you circumcised? Or, you know, why does your dick look weird? You know, I mean, have I had that? Yeah, here or there. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like, you know, it doesn't leave a scar. No pun intended. You know, but it's kind of like, but the idea of, you know, someone saying for that argument of, oh, I don't want him to be teased. It's kind of like, so you'd rather be the first one to tell him his penis wasn't good as it was and cut it off to prevent someone else may someday say something? You
Yeah.
know, it's kind of like, I mean, like I said, you know, people are going to get teased way more for, you know, maybe not being good at sports or for being overweight or you name it. There's, you know, you're probably going to get teased 10 times for
Yeah.
that, for the number of times someone mentioned your foreskin.
We don't want our parents to be like saving us from being teased. We want them to be our support team for when we do get teased. They support us for who we are.
Yeah. But if you destroy a part of the body because someone might tease it, you're almost saying, you're almost kind of supporting the people that were doing the teasing. You know, by saying, we need to get rid of this, so that everything's all good, so that you're up to standard of these bullies.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. So I mean, that's really, it's not the big deal that people make of it. Is there somebody that'll say, sure, there's people that'll say just about anything. You know, is it something where, you know, is it worth cutting your foreskin over? Absolutely not.
Yeah. So do you want to hear my mnemonic device for remembering how to spell circumcision?
Oh, what's that?
I came up with a little like a little, like a riddle. It's a riddle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I get mixed up. I spelled the circum part right, because I mean the word come is there. But then I'm like, is it an S? Is it a C? So the mnemonic device is S after C when you chop the PP. So circumcision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I'm trying to, because there's two C's, circumcision. Okay.
I was trying to play off the I before E rhyme, but mine's obviously about dick. So my other question, this is stupid. And this is actually, it's stupid, but it's also kind of like, I wonder if it's just a me thing, because I was circumcised, of course, we talked about it, but I like to say almost like, I'm like almost more loosely circumcised. So there is some like skin that moves back and forth a little bit. But also I noticed that like in college, I started using a lot of lube. I just think I was stress masturbating. But I noticed my skin got looser. So sometimes I seem like I'm circumcised, like if I'm really not hard. Obviously if I get any kind of hard, it's clearly circumcised. But there's this thing where like when the skin moves over the head, like maybe like a pubic hair gets caught and it like hurts so bad. Does that happen? Do you know?
Well, you know, it's kind of like one of those things that just about anything can happen. You know, I mean, if you can imagine it, something can happen. Now, can a pubic hair get caught? Well, you know, it could if your pubic hairs were kind of long, and if you, let's say your foreskin pulls back in your clothes and then comes back forward, and maybe a hair got caught a little bit in the end, while still, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. You know, can it happen? Yeah, but I mean, really, it's no big deal. You know, you just adjust and you're good to go. You know, or I know a lot of guys just trim their hair. I mean, and not even for whether they're circumcised or not. Just a lot of guys trim to keep it from looking all 70s. You
Well,
know, I mean,
I'm calling it my COVID bush because I've just really been very unmotivated to trim it. So you have a point. Maybe I should do a little manscaping. Um, okay, what else do I have here? Oh, my only other thing was like, we kind of talked before the recording a little bit about restoration, and you know, it's something where like, obviously I wish I were uncircumcised. I don't know if like, it would just be like a lot of effort for me to like try to restore more foreskin. Would it even be worth it? Like maybe it would be good if I was topping and I had that kind of glide sensation, but like you said, a lot of the nerves have already kind of been snipped. So what do
I
you
mean,
think?
well, so since I have my foreskin, you know, it's like I can't imagine losing any of it, nor would I ever allow anyone to do that to me. Um, so, you know, if I didn't have it, I would want to get back what I had lost, you know, any way I could, you know. Now, you know, like we were saying, it's like I don't consider myself the expert on restoring, since I mean, I have all this personal experience with the foreskin, having, you know, being uncircumcised, but, you know, I don't have that personal experience with restoring. I do know that it involves a lot of stretching over a long period of time. We're talking about years. For guys to do it, they must be very dedicated and do it consistently every day for years. So anyone who just thinks, oh well, we'll circumcise our kid, and if he doesn't like it, he can restore. It's like, no, you've got that totally wrong. You're spending years of effort to try to just get back a part of what was taken from you.
Right.
Because I mean, if you restore, I mean, yeah, you'll get back that gliding motion of the foreskin, which is how the penis is designed to work. And so it really makes things, you know, so much better and function the way it's intended. You're also going to, by having that foreskin that you've restored covering the head of the penis, the head of your penis is going to be able to soften up and get back to its consistency, shall we say, that it's supposed to be. That layer of keratinization, basically like scar, you know, covering a thickening of the skin that lowers the sensation, has formed, because this internal organ is constantly rubbing against everything externally like it's not intended to do. So that will resolve itself, and you'll have the movement of the skin. Those two things will, you know, help to the guy to have experienced more pleasure, more sensation than he did previously. But even with all of that, nerves don't regenerate. So all of those nerves that made the foreskin the most sensitive and most fantastic part of the penis, those won't grow back. So even if you restore, you're still only recovering part of what was taken from you.
Right.
So, I mean, is it worth it? I would say it's worth it, but it does take time and commitment. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people out there who have a lot of different techniques and methods, and they've had, you know, more or less success. So people that want to make that effort, I would suggest, you know, searching that out and trying to, you know,
Yeah.
figure out the best way that works for you. Um, but I mean, let's just stop stealing foreskin at birth. Just stop. You know, it's like,
Feeling it. Where do we think all the foreskins end up? Like, is there some like huge pile of foreskins in a landfill in New Jersey? Like, where are they?
well, they use them in facial creams and products. There's
Do
been a
they?
lot of
Are you kidding?
controversy. There's something in that fresh new skin we're talking about, you know, because it's from newborns, that they've used those in various skincare products. Um,
Oh my God. That's
There
insane.
have been news articles about various celebrities and stuff using those things. Of course, they don't call the ingredient foreskin. It's something for the cell name or whatever of what it was, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But
Oh
all the
God.
products that they use it in, I've never really spent much time researching that. I've put more of my focus into debunking the so-called healthcare reasons that people try to constantly say. Because I'm like, if people would realize up front there's no excuse for it,
Yeah.
then hopefully that would stop. I know there's people that have looked into all these things that they do. Um, they sell it, actually. They sell it. So they make money from the circumcisions. Not only do they bill you for the circumcision, but then they can turn around and sell the product,
Yeah.
whatever you want to, the product of the circumcision, that removed foreskin. They can sell that to those companies and make more money that way. So,
Right. Oh my God.
yeah.
Mind blown. That's so crazy. Okay, I wanted to ask you, do you know of any like really good advocacy groups for intactness?
Um, there are a lot of various groups that you can find online, um, and on Facebook and things like that. There is for the more medically minded people, there's like one called, I think if you put it, like if you were to type in like doctors against circumcision or something, doctors opposing circumcision, I think it is DOC. I think if people, if you type in that, it has like a bunch of journal articles and things like that that were written by doctors who are against circumcision and are explaining why it's not good and why people have been lied to and things like that. And I think that's a really good site. Other things that you find are more or less, you can find various other things, like there's Intact America or something like that. I mean, there's other ones that they have. If you would type in, anti-circumcision or something like that into Facebook or into Google, you'll come up with a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is important when you're talking about circumcision is you need to kind of you kind of need to stay on topic. Like some of these groups throw in other types of things that are not necessarily, that are, I feel like because they're controversial, they can turn people away, that if you could get them on circumcision, and you could save future children's foreskins, then focus on that. When you try to start, when people start telling people, like, you have sometimes a lot of people in these groups can sometimes be also anti-vaccination. Some people are against, you have a whole range of people, like you do in any group. You have a group of all doctors are quacks, I mean, you have people that are of that, oh, we can't believe anything a doctor says, to, oh, doctors are the greatest thing ever. I mean, there's a whole range, just like there is with everything else. So I don't want to say that they don't do good work, but I just think sometimes when, let's take, for example, the anti-vaccination thing. Sometimes people, like, if you want to talk to health professionals, you need to use your, research articles and things like that. And if you start just talking about, vaccines are bad and things like that, you're going to have a whole group of people that are just going to suddenly you don't know what you're talking about with anything. If they agree with vaccines, and you come off as a, let's say, quote, crazy anti-vaxxer, well, now they're not going to pay any attention to anything you said about circumcision either, because they're assuming it's coming from your same wild conspiracy theories, kind of thing. They're going to kind of write you off. So when you're if you have different issues you want to talk about, I think it's important that you focus on the issue that you want to talk about, because otherwise people may be turned off because they don't agree with some other point that you have, which may be totally unrelated. Totally unrelated. Like I've come across people that will say that, oh, we know there's a cure for cancer out there and they're just hiding it. Well, I'm in the cancer field. That's what I do in the healthcare field. And I'm kind of like, no, I've seen all the studies. There's all the research studies doing. They're constantly trying different things. And people want to act like it's some grand conspiracy of they're trying to hide a cure because they're making more money by the treatments. Well, you know what? If they did actually have a cure, they could bundle it all up and have the cure be for a really big amount of money. It doesn't mean that they're gonna lose money if they had a cure. But but people have all these crazy ideas of, you can cure it with large dose vitamin C, things like this. There's some crazy theories out there. And when I say, well, I don't know about that. I'm like, you can't just promote a treatment like this. You have to have valid scientific research. Do you have, if you have some scientific research, let me see it. Well, what I'm usually directed to, I'm going to say always directed to, if I'm given any information back from someone who's saying this, that radiation and chemo do nothing and it's all a plot, they'll send me to this page that usually looks very unprofessionally made, let's say, and it's a page of basically testimonies. Oh, I was dying of cancer, and when I went in, my doctor couldn't believe it. The cancer was all gone, and here's what I did. I'm like, that's not scientific evidence. That's not evidence. Yeah. These little testimonials of, oh, I took vitamin C 10 times a day, extra large doses, and in 6 months, my cancer was completely gone.
Yeah.
There was no study showing your scans before and your scans after. There was no, we don't have that. This is just you saying that is nothing to go by, and I just use this as an example because that's my area of work, is with the cancer thing. But I think people need to try to they need to speak in a way that they're going to get across to their audience.
Yeah.
Because even if if something that you're saying is true, but you come across to people as crazy, you're not being effective in conveying your message.
Right.
So you need to find the best way to do that and not combine. No, in other words, not to combine unrelated causes.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why I like this Doctors Opposing Circumcision, is because they are focused. This website, it is focused. They give various studies and things like that, scientific information about circumcision and the foreskin. That is the whole point of the website, and they focus on that. Now,
right.
Facebook groups are much more loosely connected. Anybody can join this group or that group, and everybody's sharing their ideas. So not everything that's said by every person is correct. People say things that their understanding of it, and it's like, no, actually not. It's, it's like there's everybody has their own little twist on it. I mean, it's, but that's the nature of when you get 1,000, thousands of human beings together, they're going to disagree on things like that. But I think if
Right.
if you look up some of those good sites, you can, also if you look up another really good place to, I think, get valuable information is if you look up European, because they have this in English, they have them in English. So if you go to like European doctors groups, like unfortunately our physician groups in the United States often, if they don't outright promote circumcision, at least they say it's the parent's choice, or they say, hey, it has enough benefits that we should offer it, and that kind of thing, which is not true, but they're biased because they grew up in the United States.
Yeah.
And they are trying to, even if they're trying to be neutral, they're still kind of leaning towards the circumcision. Now, physician
Right.
groups in Europe, if you look at their position statements, they often will say something about, like it's ethically, it's questionable to impose this on someone when it's not really protecting him against anything. And even if it was protecting anything, the things that they're saying is like STDs and things like that, you should wait until he's old enough and can make his own decision. It's to just force it on someone is not really violating his right to his own body. They say that one of them has a quote, which more or less says, yeah, circumcision is nothing but a solution looking for a problem.
Right.
So it's like, if you read what those various groups like in Europe of educated doctors who grew up and were educated in non-circumcising cultures, they're like, yeah, there's really no reason for this.
Yeah.
you know
Yikes.
it's kind of like one of those things. So reading some of those are often some nice, very scientific official stuff written by, because unfortunately sometimes people are like, well, are you a doctor? And you're like, well, no. Well, and it's like, well, then it's like, oh, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's like you have these, this is why those things like these European doctor statements, or this doctors opposing circumcision website, whatever, can be very good, because there you have actual MDs
Right.
who are saying what you're saying, but they have the credentials after their name that people are like, oh, maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's important to mention that, like, the doctor that you go to visit to ask about your body is not the kind of doctor that does research either. So the doctor you're seeing just reads whatever we can read of the research that's out there. Like, some doctors might treat and do research, but usually no, right? Like,
you have two kinds of you have doctors of all, again, just like everybody else, you have doctors of all sorts. There are doctors who always want to learn more, and they have that attitude of wanting to learn more, to constantly improve how they can help their patients, and they're involved in studying and learning and everything. And then you have those that are just like, no, I'm done with school. I'm done. Now I'm the doctor. I know everything. So you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the doctor here. That kind of doctor is not a good doctor. That kind of doctor who just wants to, oh, I know it all. It's like, no, you don't. I've talked with medical students, residents, to find out, and it's like, it's true. They do not learn anything about the foreskin. Most doctors in med school, maybe there's the exception, but usually most of them, it's like any anatomy and physiology book, because I took anatomy and physiology. It mentions the foreskin as something usually removed by circumcision. That's kind of really all you talk to. They don't really go into any detail about what the foreskin does, how it behaves, what its benefits are. It's basically it's that thing that we usually remove.
yeah.
And so when you have a doctor who that's always learned about it, if someone comes in with this problem, often it's like redness or irritation because they've been using soap, like we talked about, they should not be. The doctor doesn't know to tell them, don't use soap, quit doing that, and it'll go away. It'll resolve itself if you'll stop doing this bad thing that you're doing, the using soap. But no, the doctor thinks, oh, I remember this from med school. Problem with the penis, circumcision. There we go. Cures everything.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. But that's all they know about it. And unfortunately, because they're the doctor, they're coming from that place of authority. So even though all they know is the cultural bias they grew up with, people think, well, my doctor said,
Right. Also, like getting a circumcision, recovering from a circumcision takes time, especially if you're an adult, like, or if you're able to walk, basically, and you move around, or your penis becomes any kind of erect. Like, it is a lot harder to get it later.
But think about it as a baby, though, it hurts just as much. That was another myth that went around for a while. People tried to say, oh, babies don't feel pain. Really? Did you ever pinch one, and, you squeeze them and, even if you're just trying to play with them, maybe they'll start crying or whatever. I mean, they feel pain. They feel pain. And also, the other thing about this is that if they, forget where I was going with that.
You're talking about, I was talking about just how.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about recovery. Going with that, I was just going to say, well, as a newborn, this whole, it's more sanitary. Well, let's put a penis with an open wound on it in a diaper full of, urine and feces.
Yeah.
It's like, that sounds like a great way to go.
Do they have to give the baby antibiotics because they've circumcised it?
Well, I don't know if they give them antibiotics or not. Maybe if they're fearing an infection or something like that. But the biggest danger is blood loss. A baby has so little blood volume because they're so small that, a circumcision that starts bleeding, the parent could go to change the diaper and they've already bled into their diaper quite a lot. And that could be enough that they go into shock or other kinds of issues, because they've had such severe blood loss, and babies have died. Babies have died from blood loss. Conveniently, though, it's like they'll often say from shock or infection is what they'll put instead of complications from circumcision. So that way people seem to think, oh, well, no, circumcision is risk-free. Well, no, it can kill, but it's like one of those things that it's the only thing that people say is that, well, if it's when he's a baby, he won't remember it. That's one excuse that people will say. But with that rationale, you might as well say, well, you're gonna date what's that date drug, Rohypnol or whatever they call it, they talk about. It's like, well, you drug someone and then rape them, they won't remember it. It's kind of that same mentality of, okay, so just because they won't remember it, it's okay to violate somebody in that way. It's like, I don't think so.
No.
Not in how I see morality, and not the way morality is. Just because someone doesn't remember it doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean you're free. You didn't do the right thing just because they don't remember it.
Right.
So.
And I think the main problem is that people think that foreskin is wrong. Like, they just think it's the wrong way to be. Right? Because
that's kind of that attitude. That's kind of the attitude a lot of people have, unfortunately.
And we also think, especially as Americans, that the way we do things is the way that everybody does things. And it's like, we're such a minority in a global sense it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rest of the world doesn't do shit like we do shit.
Yeah, it is kind of one of those things. People, there was another paper talking about that, where it was talking about like attitudes towards circumcision, and it was saying how like they were comparing people. They had a series of questions that they asked both people who were born in the United States and grew up here, like several generations, like they were fully enculturated in the in the United States, let's say, versus people that were born in other countries and had immigrated here later. And they would ask them about circumcision. And, and they would say, like they would ask, for example, they would ask them, well, did you know that the vast majority of the world doesn't do circumcisions? The person born in other countries was like, yeah, I'm not. Everybody I grew up with wasn't. Yeah, I know that. The American, I don't want to say the American native, not sure what I'm trying to think of the right word. The person who's been from the United States for several generations. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Let's say your typical Midwesterner who's always lived in the United States.
Yeah.
They were like, they don't? I mean, it was like they were like shocked and appalled that people didn't.
Yeah.
And they had little things where the things that people, had said about it. The American person who thought America was the center of the universe would say, that's a lot of germs. Oh boy, like they were like kind of like, oh, that's not good. That's not good. It's healthier to be circumcised, of course. And the other person, the other person that had grown up outside the United States was like, no, it's perfectly fine. No big deal. I mean, it was a drastic contrast in just how they perceived the practice, both in how common it was and whether it was a good thing or bad thing. It was a very different response. And they had random people and they would ask these series of questions. It was a very interesting article. It was a scientific journal article where they were doing a comparison of attitudes of different cultures on circumcision.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I've learned so much from you, and I guess I figured I'd learn some things, but you kind of blew my mind several times. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, no problem. I'm always happy to talk about these topics. I think it's really important.
I love the work you're doing. What is your channel called for the listeners on the podcast?
Well, right now my channel is called, it's just Sam C. So SAM and then a capital C. Now my boyfriend has also started helping me do some videos, and we're going to be doing more. So we are in the next few months. We're trying to come up with a different name for it. To kind of we don't know exactly what yet, but we just want to rename it because it's not just me. It's going to be both of us doing this. So that could be changing, but for right now, it's just Sam C.
There's some really cute possibilities involving uncut. I'm already dreaming about what you're going to be called later. I'll let you know.
Okay.
I like the title thing. Cool. Is there anything else you wanted to offer the listeners? Is just an overall message, or?
I think the overall thing is just that it's the whole point of this is the foreskin is a healthy part of the body. It's a great and wonderful thing. There's no reason to remove it. And, for those that want to insist on something like that, well, the only person who has the right to make that decision in the first place is the one whose body part it is. And that's the man himself, not his parents, not healthcare guardians, not doctors, nurses. No, it's the man to whom the foreskin belongs. And I
Yeah.
think that the fact that people want to even say that they don't like foreskin or they think it's gross, it's because they've been indoctrinated with these ideas. I mean, in a country that does not practice circumcision, and I'm going to mention Peru again because that's the country my boyfriend is from. They're kind of like, they're like shocked that there's even a reason for having a channel like mine where you need to tell people why circumcision is a bad idea and why the foreskin is wonderful. I mean, a country that is non-circumcising, they're just like, well, yeah. It's kind of like to them, it's almost like, well, yeah, of course it's great and wonderful. It's like, why would it be any other way? It's only, so sometimes it takes a little bit of time. People in a country like that, when they first realized, I mean, when I first told my boyfriend how many people in the United States were circumcised and how much was removed, because again, they don't have necessarily, it's not in the forefront of their minds of what a circumcised penis looks like. So when I was telling him how much they remove in a circumcision, he was like, oh, I mean, he had that exact involuntary response that any group of guys does if someone gets kicked in the nuts or gets a ball thrown there unexpectedly and he keels over in pain. That was his exact response. Just at the very idea, of that the foreskin getting removed was a sickening idea. I mean, and that's kind of, I mean, that should be the normal, natural response, but yet people in the United States have been brainwashed with these ideas for over 100 years. And so it takes time. We have to slowly undo this cultural brainwashing that they've been subjected to. Because even if you show them the information, they still don't want to see it.
Yeah. Do you prefer to be with partners that are uncircumcised? Like, have you dated both and you're kind of just like, yeah, this is what I want?
I have been with both. I would never have turned someone down because they were circumcised. But it's definitely much better when they are uncircumcised. When they have their foreskin, that's of course the ideal.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm very lucky that both my boyfriend and I are uncircumcised. I mean, he also, when I was explaining to him how it was, he was also very happy that I had escaped this very real danger being born in the United States. My foreskin was at risk when I was born. So he's very happy that I'm not. I'm very happy that he's not. Would either one of us had been like, nope, I'm not gonna marry you, not good, because you're circumcised. No, because there's more to a person than that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that we're both very happy that we have, and that each other has.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much, Sam. This has been like great. I feel like I've just been talking about dick for 2 hours, which is literally true.
It is.
Do you ever get tired of talking about penises?
No, I mean, it's a fascinating topic. I mean, both scientifically and just because, being gay, I mean, penis looks good. A penis is attractive. I mean, what can I say?
Yeah.
But I mean, especially though, when you can combine that idea of something that is attractive with scientific research, it makes you all the more gung-ho to kind of read read these journal articles and everything, and that show it's like, no, it's not just that I like it or that I have it or that I prefer it. It's like there's real scientific basis to say that, yeah, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is, our basic biology is, that's how it works. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely, when you enjoy what you're studying, or enjoy what you're researching, it makes the hard work of digging through all those statistics and it makes it more doable, more interesting, and everything like that. So
Yeah, totally. And I think you're probably helping a lot of people by, with your channel.
I hope so. It's trying to get it to grow more. It's like I said, it seems you see those channels where you see people have been on there just talking about who knows what, and in 3 months they're at 10,000 people, and you're like, oh, here I am.
Yeah.
I've been really doing this more seriously for close to 3 years, and I'm just hit 1,000 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe. It's been
Well,
within the past month, just hit 1,000 people, which was yay, awesome. But I'm like, I want 100,000 people. I want 100. I want a lot of people doing this. But
yeah.
So one of the things, but I mean, I guess there's only so many people that are really going to watch videos that are on this topic, but hopefully it'll slowly grow.
You need to get some dancing boys, some like dancing go boys on either side of you.
I mean, that might attract some people, but I mean, just for everybody out there, my channel is not, my channel is like very, it's not just gay people who follow it. It's also like focused at trying to talk about the benefits and how awesome having a foreskin is.
Yeah.
To prevent future straight couples having children from circumcising. So, it's like really meant to try to, I'm trying to catch everybody on, the way I talk about it, everything I talk about it, everything I talk about. Maybe it's too gay for some, maybe it's not gay enough for others.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a topic that whether someone is gay or straight, it's something that they need to pay attention to and to help put a stop to. I think it's something that everybody should, I mean, because penises affect everyone.
They do.
Like, it's like really whether you're gay, straight, whatever, penis is part of life. And, you want to have every part of your body really the way it was designed. So, that's really the whole point, is to kind of eradicate this idea that a foreskin is a problem. No, it's like, no, it's not. That is a myth that people promoted to push circumcision. And I think that's kind of like the whole, I try to cover all the different things that I hear people say or see that people have written in comments against the foreskin or whatever, and I try to cover all of those things.
Yeah.
In multiple times, in multiple ways, in various settings on my channel, and that's kind of the whole purpose behind it, is to really get people to realize that the foreskin is a good thing. It's a good thing. It's not a problem. And I think that's kind of that's the bottom line, that like you could really try to focus on talking about how horrible circumcision is. And I mean, yes, I do talk about that as well, because that's part of the whole thing. Or you could really just talk about like how awesome it is to have your foreskin, being uncircumcised, intact, uncut, whatever term people use. It's awesome and it's incredible. and I'm very proud that I have mine. And I think, and trying to put that message out there, I've had a lot of people either in the messages or email me that say, hey, you know what? I was always kind of embarrassed, but after seeing some of your videos, I'm happy that I'm not circumcised. I'm like, great. Then my channel has been a success. Because not only do I want to reach people to stop circumcising, but I also want to reach guys who have their foreskin, but have been always kind of a little ashamed or embarrassed because of the way culture talks about it. I want them to be proud. If someone says, well, I don't want to get with you, you have one of those dirty foreskins, it's like, huh, okay, your loss. It's like, be like, don't be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not circumcised, is that okay? No, if they have a problem with it, that is their problem. And I think guys that have their foreskin, they need to have this attitude. Don't apologize for being uncircumcised. Be proud of it. And that's the other thing I try to really get on my channel, is really, really try to push that idea as well.
I love that. Well, this has been great. So thank you for being on Make Sex With Me podcast.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yes, anytime. I mean, I'm sure I'll have more questions. I'm kind of where you are. I'm doing a podcast that's like about sex and sexuality and body positivity and all the things and gender. And I'm super queer, and like a lot of my friends are gay or some kind of trans or all these things. And I'm trying to reach out to other people. Like, I'd like to have a straight person on the show. I know straight people. It's just, not everyone is super comfortable talking about sex or their body. So yeah, it's a struggle to try to keep it all inclusive for everybody, but hopefully I'll get
I can see that. I can definitely see that. It can be hard to get it can be hard. Yeah. Sometimes people don't want to talk about certain parts of their body. It's like, maybe it's a straight guy. If they talk to another guy about their penis, it's too gay. Or that kind of thing, or the other way. So it's like, it can definitely be a struggle to get people to kind of get involved in that topic, and in talking to people about these things. Sometimes, I mean, when you first start doing it, you definitely have to kind of force yourself to go outside your comfort zone, to kind of talk about these. Like when you first start putting these videos out there and you're openly saying, hey, yes, I have my foreskin, I'm very happy about it, and then you make it public, you're kind of like, oh, who's gonna see this? It's out there now,
Grandma.
So it's kind of like one of those things. You're like, it's there's a little bit of fear at first, definitely. But of course, the more you do it, the more you're like, just like with having the foreskin. Hey, if you don't like that I have foreskin, that is your problem. Kind of thing. So
you don't like my channel, want that? Yeah, exactly. Well, I hope that I hope your channel explodes. I'm so excited, and anything I can do to help, you have my support.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope people will keep subscribing, and and it'll keep on growing. They'll keep watching the videos, and
well, I'm going to keep watching for sure.
Awesome.
And anyone who writes it about penises, I'm just going to send them your way.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm always happy to get new viewers. So people mentioning it in their podcasts and things like that definitely helps get other people checking out different channels and things like that. So that's definitely good.
Totally. So. All right. Well, I'm probably going to go to sleep soon. It's like late now.
So it is getting late. What is it? Oh, yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock here.
Yeah, so. It's the same here.
Oh, that's right. You're Eastern time.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
me. Well, thank you again so much, and I look forward to speaking with you again sometime.
I would like that.
Okay, and
Yeah.
I want to meet your boyfriend.
Yes, definitely. Sometime we'll have to do. Maybe we'll have to come on the podcast again and
Yeah.
do something, include him in it as well.
What's his name? What's his
Sandro.
name?
His name is Sandro.
Sandro. Oh, I love that. I have a friend named Sandra. It's kind of like the male version of Sandra.
It is. It is.
I love it. Is it short for like Alessandro?
It can be, but in his case, no. I mean, it's the complete name by itself. But
Oh,
there are people. There are other people who have the name Alessandro and go by Sandro as a nickname.
yeah.
You know, but
Well, that's like me.
but it can also be a full name all on its own. And in his case,
Yeah.
that's what it is. So.
Well, that's like Drue. I'm not an Andrew. I'm just a Drue.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing. Some people, yeah, I've met other people who were Drue, and they're like, no, it's not. You know, even before you even say, oh, Drue, they're like, no, not short for Andrew. I'm like, I wasn't gonna ask that. You know? But evidently, they've got so used to, you know, to
having
to tell people that, you know. So it's so yeah.
It's called the Drue complex. We all have it.
Okay.
But anyway. All right, Sam. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.